Record. Shalom, good afternoon from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Mr. Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in the United States of God of Israel, bless America, in New York State, 1981, now celebrating our 44th year. Today is Wednesday, April 23rd, 2025, in the Gregorian calendar. And it is the 25th day of the first Israelite Hebrew month of Nisan in the Hebrew Israelite calendar year 5785. Welcome to episode 33 of our monthly seminar entitled Ancient Roots Mothering, Roots, Nettles, and Sage, with three mighty women of the God of Israel, Mrs. J. Rivkah Asoulin of the Lower Galilee in Eretz Yisrael, Mrs. Chava Dagan of the Northern Negev in Eretz Yisrael, Mrs. Gilla, Weiss in Florida, and God of Israel, bless America, and special guest speaker, the old friend, apparently, from what I'm told, of these lovely ladies, is Miss Malkie, Rimon of Ra'anana here in Eretz Yisrael, and a special friend they have, Kathy Harris, joining them. And I'll be joining Kathy in the audience in a moment. There'll be links below. Please support everyone's works. There's so many ways you can do that. Buy products, buy services, there's many ways. You'll see the links below. And now, without further ado, let me hand over the mic to Chava, Rivkah, Gilla, and Malkie for another illuminating talk. I mean, certainly illuminating for me. So much practical, homespun advice on herbs and living, and I always look forward to these programs. So, ladies, it's all yours.
Thank you, Lowell, Aryeh, a lion of our times. And thank you to everybody, not only Kathy. We love Kathy, but there are other members of the audience that we want to thank as well. Thank you for being here, and thank you for watching on replay, and thank you everyone for being here. As Lowell Aryeh said, we have a special guest for you today. And that is our dear friend, Malkie Rimon, who incidentally, we all became friends with separately many, many, many years ago. I would say at least 20 years ago for all of us. And before we even met each other, meaning me and Chava and Gilla, we all had independently connected with Malkie. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that one of the reasons that we connected with Malkie at that time was because of her clear-headed advice, her insight, and her incredible what she now calls coaching. We didn't call it that back then. We called it just kind of like friendship, but it was an extraordinary ability to see to the core of people. And Malkie is a fellow homeschooler. And so this is kind of where she got her start, if that's okay for me to say, Malkie, and in this field was in attachment parenting and homeschooling. And this is kind of her base. And so while a lot of us were finding our way, and a lot of at least what I talk about on this show for every week really has roots in what I learned from Malkie. So I feel like we're bringing the source right to you today. I want to give a little introduction about Malkie. Malkie Rimon is a Jungian life coach. That's Jung, Young. Okay, just so we all know who we're talking about. As a Jungian life coach, Malkie helps people unlock the dormant parts of their personality and transform them into gold. Her work is rooted in in-depth psychology, guiding clients to uncover the forces shaping their lives and develop new ways of thinking, leading, and relating. With a strong background in attachment parenting, Malkie understands how our earliest relationships influence the way we navigate the world. Whether she's helping business people, leaders, or parents, her approach weaves together wisdom, active imagination, and deep self-inquiry to spark lasting transformation. Her mission is to help you, yes, you, integrate the parts of yourself that you've overlooked so you can show up in life, work, and relationships with greater clarity, confidence, and purpose. And really, as a personal I guess, referral from me. That's really true. Getting into those primary relationships. And that's so much of what we talk about is the importance of raising our children with that kind of nurturing, connected relationships that will carry them into their lives as adults and in their future relationships with their children, in the workplace, all over. And yeah, so we're super, super happy to have Malkie here. We asked Malkie to come and speak about mothering as the hero's journey, or the heroine's journey in this case. So the process of mothering in the way that Chava and Gilla and I have talked about for so long is very all encompassing. Nursing on demand and nursing and not giving formula, where everything is really on the mother, waking up in the middle of the night all night long, even homeschooling, being in a relationship, a physical and mental and emotional and spiritual relationship with your children 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is really not second nature to everybody. And it's something that transforms and develops us as mothers and as human beings. And so Malkie's going to share this a bit with us. So I have simplified what Malkie simplified it, but I've simplified it even more to Malkie's chagrin. And I'm calling this the heroine's journey in 10 easy steps. And Malkie says it's not really 10, it's really 11, it's really 13 and all of that. But okay, so 10 easy steps. So just a brief overview, and then we're turning over to Malkie. So we're going to talk about the call to adventure, step 1. Refusal or acceptance of the call, step 2. Leaving the comfort zone or leaving the mother. And we're going to be talking about archetypes here. So we're not saying necessarily cutting off all ties with your mother. That isn't what we're talking about. Okay. Number 4, belly of the whale. Ooh, intriguing. Number 5, facing the dragon. Say what? Number 6, meeting the goddess. 7, fall into materialism. 8, meet with the father. 9, nirvana. And 10, the return. So Malkie, welcome and take it away. Tell us about this.
Okay, wow. So before we even get to the hero, if I could just lay some groundwork, right? In Jung's, so I am a student of Dr. Avi Goren Bar here in Tel Aviv, and he was a Jungian therapist for 40 years, and I became a coach with his program. And Jungian coaching is very, very different from conventional coaching. And it's built on Jung's basic idea, which is that there exists everything, like imagine all the things that you know your children's names, you know your home address, you know all of, you know what the weather is right now, boiling hot here in Israel. You know the people in your life. There are things that you know your job, you know probably how to do your job like by rote, right? And this all exists in what Jung called the ego. Totally different than Freud's ego. This is Jung's conception of the ego. It's basically everything that exists in your conscious awareness. But then underneath that lies the vast unconscious. And inside the unconscious, there is, first of all, there's data coming at us constantly. So a lot of it just gets dumped into the unconscious. Also, we're born pre-programmed, according to Jung, with almost like shapes that become stories. That already exist in our unconscious mind. So those could be the mother, like capital M, the father, capital F, the hero, the magician, the trickster, the lover, the ruler, right? All of these things all exist inside, and depending on what culture we're born into, all of these become stories that shape who we are and how we think of the world that we live in. And the hero is one of those stories. And before I go further, I also want to talk just a tiny bit. I want to touch on Jung's conception of the masculine and the feminine. This is not the same as men and women, because it is more of the archetypal ideas of what feminine historically has been and what masculine historically has been. A lot of my clients are just more comfortable using the words being for the feminine and doing for the masculine. And it's important to just touch on that before we go further, that being is things like containment, it's things like emotions, and I'm just trying to think like, and whatever you perceive of as traditionally feminine, right? And I don't mean that in terms of like cosplay, I mean that in terms of the nature. And just once again, there are men who are prototyp who most people are somewhere in the 40-60 range of masculine and feminine. There are men who have more feminine traits than masculine, and women who have more masculine traits than feminine. Men are men, women are women. I'm very, very comfortable with this. I don't want to confuse anyone into the perception that being more feminine means that you have to be a woman. It doesn't. It just means that this is how you're wired, and that's okay. So having said that, the hero is one of these archetypes. And the hero has a hero's journey. And when Rivkah contacted me and said, would you like to talk about this in terms of mothering? I was like, wow, that would be absolutely amazing. Because I had already been talking to Avi how the women's hero's journey is different from the men's hero's journey. And I also want to touch on one more thing, which is who you are as a mother when you've got little babies hanging on your skirts and you move through space like a five-headed creature because there's one on your back and there's one on your front and there's one clinging here and there's one clinging there, is very, very different from where you are in, say, my stage of life with grown children who can use a little, like they can get out of the nest now. It's time for them to fly. It's a different reality, right? So we're going to try and touch on both of those phases in life. Okay. Any questions so far, Rivkah?
No, I'm good. As far as audience questions, we save them to the end, but I will pipe in and hopefully Gilla and Chava will as well if something isn't making sense to us or we'd like to hear more.
Okay, fantastic. So step one of the hero's journey is you're living in your ordinary world. You don't perceive it as your ordinary world. This is just the world that you've got. This is everything that you know. You know where the local, you know where to get the good chicken, and you know how to you know how to operate Zoom. These, you exist in your community, and this is the ordinary world. And suddenly there comes a call to adventure. And the call to adventure can be basically anything. It can be something that the idea is that the call to adventure is something that wants you to get out of your comfort zone. Think of the ordinary world as your comfort zone, and think of the call to adventure as something that forces you or asks you or notifies you that you will be leaving your comfort zone. And I think that pregnancy is a really, really good metaphor for the call to adventure, because this is, first of all, pregnancy is a beautiful metaphor for everything involving the hidden and the feminine. But also it's it is the ultimate, you're about to go on the adventure of your life, and whether or not you even are aware of how much. But there can be quiet call to adventures. Most people believe that the call to adventure is going to be loud and they're going to be trumpets playing. No, it's going to be a job loss or a job offer. It's going to be a decision to make a move. It's basically anything that pulls you out of where you are. And that's step one. And step two, I think we decided on refusal of the call, because naturally the first thing that you do when you get a call is you say, oh, now is not a good time. And by the way, this is an optional step. Not everybody goes through this step, but very, very often you receive the call and you say, not now. And generally it's frowned upon in our society to refuse the call. What? You don't want to go on this amazing adventure? Of course you want to go on this amazing adventure. But there are times where the most important word in your vocabulary is no. And we're going to tie this back to when our little children are called to adventure. And sometimes it's our job to make sure they refuse that call. Because this doesn't just apply to mothers and this doesn't just apply to fathers. This also touches on our children. Our children will receive calls to adventure, and sometimes it's our job to make sure they don't get it. But also in just terms of being an adult, a mature adult, sometimes you hear a call to adventure and you're like, you know what, this has to be somebody else's adventure. This can't be mine today. And I know that I've had that experience very recently during the war when there was just a call for tremendous amounts of volunteering and my daughter was in and out of the hospital. So I was getting this other call, but I couldn't answer it because I already had this, pre-existing thing that I needed to take care of. That was early on in the war. Baruch Hashem, she's okay now. And then in terms of so imagine back, you've got your hero, or in this case, your heroine, and she's had her call to adventure, and she's decided, you know what, I'm going to do this. Rivkah, did we say that this is where we're talking about the separation from the mother, or the next one? What did we decide here?
Yeah, so if you accept the call, then you've got
Right.
to leave your comfort zone and you have to
Exactly.
leave the mother archetype. Yeah.
Thank you so much for reminding me. Now, leaving the mother is not literally please. This is not literally leaving your specific mother. It could be, if you're moving overseas, you have to leave your physical mother, but that's not the idea. The idea is leaving the feminine a little bit or leaving the archetypal feminine, because while the archetypal feminine it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's intuition, it's emotions, it's containment, and it's all of the hidden darkness. Think of the moon, right? And it's cyclical. It's things that repeat over on themselves. And this is a beautiful and highly valuable. One of the mistakes that the Western world has made has been to move away from the traditional feminine and embrace the masculine almost completely. And as a result, has lost a tremendous fountain of wisdom. But at the same time, we already have it as women, right? So there are times where, as a woman, we need to know we've got this in reserve, it's in our pack, but now it's time to leave it behind and see what other modes of being we have available to us. And
Okay,
that would
so just to interject here for clarity, the call to action necessitates doing. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
yes, yes. And part of doing means leaving being, right? They can, they obviously coexist, but we're talking in terms of storytelling right now. We're talking in terms of archetypes. So that is the leaving of the mother. It is the leaving of, it's letting go of a tight hold on the femininity within us. But we will come back to it. Don't think that this is a permanent thing. This is just we need to leave this behind in order to go on our adventure. And then comes in the supernatural aid, where there is somebody who comes to help us. It's a mentor, it's a mother who knows, it's a friend, it's a podcast. It's beautiful women who come to you every single month to hold your hand and help you along. And this is the idea of supernatural aid, where when you start off on a quest, and mothering is very, very much a quest, and it's a quest for growing functional adult children. That's what you want at the end. When you're nursing a little baby, a part of your mind, I don't know if you remember in the Brit, right? When the baby has a Brit Milah, circumcision ceremony, one of the lines that we say is, Ze katan gadol yeh. This little pitskala, tiny little baby is going to be an adult. And we say this when the child is 8 days old, because it's important to remember that the journey that we're on is also a journey that they're on, and that they need to reach adulthood. And that's part of our mission, is to get them there. And it's not so easy. It really isn't. Okay, so we leave on the adventure. We cross the first threshold. We say, okay, we're doing this, and automatically, what part of being a hero means failure. I cannot stress this enough. If you are trying, it means you're in the arena, and if you're in the arena, there's a really good chance that you're going to mess up. And every hero needs to get really, really comfortable with that fall into the belly of the whale, the despair that accompanies it, the sadness, shame and guilt, they're all part of being in the belly of the whale. It's part of the failure. It's part of the you tried and didn't succeed. And that's normal, because part of the way is that when you're first going on the call to adventure, you don't necessarily have the tools to meet the dragon yet. And you realize, oh my gosh, I am in over my head. And that I am in over my head is probably, I don't know how many times a day I had that thought when I was a young mother. And even now, I've got adult kids, still have it sometimes. And that when you hear that thought in your head, welcome to the belly of the whale, it is a normal, normal part of mothering. Okay, do we move on? Okay, but
Yeah,
now we're
I'll interject here because there's something that you said, and I want to hit the point home, because when you talked to us about it in our meeting beforehand, it was so mind blowing for me, and I want it to be mind blowing for everybody else too. Is that once you leave your comfort zone and leave that kind of receptive energy into the doing energy, and we know you're setting up for failure and in over your head because you're out of your comfort zone, it's that mentor or that someone who's going to be there to help you. And this part reminds me of something that Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers fame said in an interview, where he said that his mother taught him. He was an extraordinary man. He was training for the priesthood, I believe, and then ended up getting into children's education, children's television education. And he said his mother would always tell him that during the time of crisis, look for the helpers. And when I heard it then, I had shivers all over. And when I heard you say it just now, and the first time when we talked before, I have shivers all over, because there always is someone to help, isn't there? And so often we feel like, no, we're totally alone and there's nobody. And sometimes the people are there, but we can't even see them or hear them because we're so stuck in our own belly of the whale.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to point that out because it really changes everything. I talked with my son today, who's now in his first few days of military service. And that's something that I asked him straight away was, have you identified the helpers? Have you identified your allies? Because it can be very overwhelming to know, there's people yelling at you and don't worry about that. Just look for the helpers. So I just want to stress that point for everybody because it's so heartening. And I think it gives people so much courage to take that journey.
And in addition, I think that this is something that we don't discuss enough. This is a strength that women in particular have. Women tend to have a much easier time forming community than men do.
We have a frozen Malkie. While we're waiting for Malkie to return, would Chava or Gilla like
In
to?
fact, this
you're
is
back.
already when you hear about the fight, you hear about fight or flight. I'm back. When you hear about fight or flight, right? That's a male response. There exists among women another response, which is to gather. In times of stress, women lean on their community. So on the one hand, the hero's journey is inherently lonely because you're leaving your comfort zone and you're out of your comfort zone. On the other hand, being a woman, you have this advantage of finding that like helping hand and also being a helping hand. I cannot stress this enough that when you know a little bit more, already you're qualified to help. Okay, as soon as you have a 2-day-old baby and your friend has a 1-day-old baby, you're qualified to help somebody with a 1-day-old baby. Why? Because you did it already. And I just like really want women to feel really about both being receiving of help and also being that guide, being that, being the magical fairy godmother to someone else, because it helps you very, very much on your journey as well. Okay, so so something I also wanted to add earlier on, we discussed this, which is when you're talking about early motherhood is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those 5 steps, rinse and repeat, because early motherhood is hard. Human babies are born completely helpless. They're born 9 months too early. They are like, you basically work under the assumption that all human infants are born premature. And as a mother, something I did that I found extremely helpful was I assumed that at birth, each one of my infants was the most high needs infant ever born to humanity, and then started that as my baseline and dialed back what a lot of mothers seem to want to do is they'll start at whatever the most conventional thing is, and then if the child turns out to be high needs, they'll ramp it up. I found that for like optimal my sanity and the baby's sanity, start with the assumption that this kid with like has, with absolutely an unformed nervous system and no immune system, and their brains are barely grown in. That takes 3 years. You have to, I start with the assumption that this is the most high needs kid that has ever been born. And then I work from there. I find that to be very, very helpful. But yeah, early motherhood is those first few over and over and over again. But I think that the later stages of motherhood and the later stages of the hero's journey also can help inform. And we are now are we at the road of trials now? I believe so. Right? Oh no, I think we're at the meeting of the goddess. Oh, which is, let's go with the road of trials a little bit more. The road of trials is where you begin to engage with, yes, well, the road of trials is where you begin to engage with the things that feel like they're going to defeat you. It's where you engage with your dragons. And dragons are terrifying. Dragons are very, very scary. And they carry behind them, there's a treasure. So when you overcome your dragon, some right behind it is the gold that the dragon possesses. And slaying that dragon is really, really key. But I'd like to say that when I use this as a metaphor. And overwhelmingly, occasionally, I'm not going to lie, there exist dragons on the outside. Some dragons we can do something about. Some dragons we need an army to do something about. But when I'm using this, I'm really more than anything talking about the weaknesses that we have that keep us from reaching our goals overwhelmingly. And the other thing I'd like to say is that the dragon is not your child. Very often it's easy to fall into an adversarial position with your child, and it is so easy to fall into the win-lose with, like, because people that you love the most trigger you the most. It's just how it works. And it's very, very easy for some mothers to come to the conclusion that the child is the dragon. And I urge you to just take a step back and see if you can't partner with your child. And the dragon is maybe something that they could need help with, or maybe it's something primarily that you need to overcome within yourself. And then there's the meeting of the goddess, which is that deep, warm, amazing relationship that you have been looking for, because ultimately I think that a lot of motherhood is about, gaining, about overcoming the parts of yourself that limit your ability to really connect with your child, and hopefully even with your spouse, and the overcoming those parts of yourself and then being able to be there fully as a mother. And I think that a really good metaphor for that is that meeting with the goddess. And then because once you're the hero, there is, there are ups and there are downs. And one of the downs of reaching that point is that there can often be a fall into materialism, where we're so close, we love our children so much, we want to give them everything. And I think it's obvious to show you how dangerous. I just like to say I do this all the time. This is for me. This is, even now, even with all these years of experience, I can sometimes fool myself into believing that giving my kids things is the same thing as giving them me. It's not, but it is one of the pitfalls on the heroine's journey. And the way out of that is actually the meeting with the father, which is cultivating our masculine traits even more and cultivating the doing side of our personality, because that is the because those are the things that are going to help us through. It's the rules. It's knowing what the rules are. It's knowing what rules to implement. It's having a plan. It's having direction. And incorporating that into your motherhood is actually really, really helpful for your child's development. And it's also really, really helpful for your development because there's not some ideal, at least in Jung's conception, that we be 100% feminine and 0% masculine, because that would make us completely incompetent and incapable and lost in the shadow of the feminine. It would be a terrible thing. And the idea is wherever it is that you're stronger, incorporate and work on the things within you that are weaker. For me, that was very much the meeting with the father, because I tended to rely overly much on my emotional reason, my intuition. And with Jungian coaching, I began to lean more on my masculine and develop it. And it was not, it wasn't fun or easy. I did it because it was important to me and because I had the call to adventure more than anything else. And developing that masculine side of you is really, really important, because then you reach this new comfort zone, right? This new comfort zone that's so much bigger than the comfort zone that you started out with. It's a comfort zone with, I hope, with peace and with joy, and where you have overcome your weaknesses and you have strengthened your strengths, and maybe even managed to turn some of those weaknesses into strengths. And then at the very, very end, you get to go back to the feminine. You get to reincorporate the feminine, and because we don't leave it behind. And then we go back and because we have done this, it is now absolutely time for us to reach out to mothers beginning the journey and hold their hands and help them walk through it also, so that they know that they've got somebody that they can rely on. They've got a a fairy godmother who's going to fly in and be there with a pot of soup, and the knowledge that and that deep, deep knowledge that the journey is worth it. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, so I have a lot of questions on these last steps, but maybe Chava or Gilla wants to weigh in first. Do you have some things you'd like to say or some questions first?
I would first of all, thanks so much, Malkie. I know we had our meeting, and I'm looking at my notes as you speaking, and I'm just absorbing again. I feel like, especially me, it's the kind of thing, and I think all women and mothers, that we need to hear again and again, and each time the words will, like drips of water, will absorb and process this more. But I was wondering if you could share like just some practical, relatable like stories, or just like little clips from your life or just in general, because I feel like so many of us relate that way the best as well. And that way it would clarify these amazing concepts to bring them down into our practical. So if you can share like even just one or two, I think it would be amazing.
If I can be even more pointed than that, maybe start from the child is not the dragon. So I was thinking about this conversation we had before we started recording about one of my children when he was young. He pulled out a knife on his siblings, and that was kind of his modus operandi. And I watched many years later what another mother going through that and saying, my child is a psychopath. My child is the enemy. My child needs psychiatric care. In other words, my child is the dragon. And that was not the position that I took. It didn't even occur to me to think that my child was the dragon. In that situation, it was like, just like you said, Malkie, maybe it's something you can help your child with. Maybe it's something you can fix in yourself or how you're framing things. So maybe you could speak a bit more about that starting from there.
Okay, so this is a tough one for me today, because just today I met with my coach, and we discovered that I am not sufficiently in touch with my aggression, with my inner aggression. This is something I am working on right now, because what I need to say is that we treat aggression as though it is the enemy. And aggression isn't the enemy. Aggression is often just the result of frustration. And when you've got a very creative, very imaginative, very intelligent child, their aggression is going to take on shapes that you as a mother didn't expect. And when it's a boy, even more so. They're their own planet. And I say this as a mother of one boy, bless him, and three girls. But boys are a different planet than girls. When you've got a highly imaginative, highly Intelligent child, their aggression is going to take on forms, wow, you didn't see it coming. And that's normal. And aggression in early childhood is absolutely normal. When up until it, and it depends on the child, it might be age 5, 6, 7, 8. And if it's a child who's developing more slowly, it can even be later than that. When the aggression enters, when the frustration enters the system, out comes frustration. I'm sorry, when frustration enters the system, out comes aggression. And one of my children, who shall remain nameless, for about 6 years, the moment she became frustrated, she would smack somebody. And before that, she would bite somebody. She was always like evolving. When we would tell her no biting, she stopped biting, she started hitting. Right? As soon as the aggression entered the system, it found its way out. It was a while until she gained the maturity to feel the frustration and make a choice that was different from aggression. And this is perfectly normal development. No knives in her case, but only because she wasn't a boy. I think if she was a boy, it probably would have been, because she fits that kind of profile. Highly intelligent, highly creative. And when you see your child going through this, and this is more of the attachment piece of my background, when the child isn't a dragon, the child's just a frustrated child. And it's okay, little kids, especially little kids, and the more immature kids, there are kids who just take longer to develop. Without calling anybody out, I know a little boy, he's 12 in physical age, and developmentally, he's probably about 8. And that's okay. He's just, when he reaches adulthood, he's going to be an amazing adult. He's just taking a slower path, and that's all right. And there are kids who will sometimes take a quicker path. There are kids who can reach this at 5, 6. Usually more like 6. But it really, really depends as their brains grow in, because as I said earlier, the humans are born with everything ready to hook up. Right, all the pieces are there, but it takes time for the brain to make those connections. And we as parents and we as mothers have to be patient, because you can't push the river. It's not going to help. You can't make a child develop faster than biology allows them to. You can create conditions that ideally help them, help foster that connection, because inside of connection with your child, that's where they can develop more. Like, that's where they can develop more quickly. If they have a safe attachment, they don't have to, they're not using their energy to protect themselves. They can use that energy to grow.
I think that one of the things for the mothers that are caught up in the system, be it a school system or a medical system or whatever, this type of thinking is so out of the box, Malkie, where I think that, because we were homeschooling, we had kind of a more chill, a bit, path, and we were able to observe more. So what you're saying right now, that there's a child who's 12, but he has a mental age or an emotional age of 8, no one in the system is going to give women that information. There's no positive reinforcement for that. It's the kids have to be 12-year-olds do this, and they learn this, and this is what's expected, the end. And what happens if you have, I have a child who's young, and he's really immature. And if he were in the system, he would be ADHD, problematic, get the psychologist involved. And because I'm not in the system and I'm not thinking in the system, I'm not locked into it, it didn't bother me. I didn't have to worry about it. And I just trusted the process and was able to sit back and say, yeah, he'll grow up eventually. And he did. But the thing is that simultaneously, I see in my community other mothers who've got the same kind of things that I'm going through, because like you said, it is normal, but they're immediately running to those psychologists because the school told them, you need a psychologist, running to get the Ritalin prescription because that kid will not sit still during class, because developmentally, they need more action and movement. They're not able to sit at a desk for so long, and they're being told that this is a medical problem. So I just wanted to point that out, because our viewers are at different ends of the spectrum, and this is kind of revolutionary. In the case of a child who's pulling a knife and that sort of thing, if the child isn't the dragon, Malkie, what is the dragon in that situation?
That's a really, really good question. maybe in that situation, we need to put aside the metaphor of the dragon. Maybe in that situation, we just look at the pain. We just look at the pain the child is in. Listen, there exist diagnoses. There are kids who are born a little bit different, who don't necessarily have empathy, who, for whatever reason, um, normal development is going to pass them by. And even that child is not the dragon, because we know that even those children with the right amount of support, with the right amount of love, these children are the children who can become surgeons. These are the children who can really contribute tremendously and positively to society, even though they may not necessarily have the empathy that we so badly want them to have. Um, can I just take a segue? One of my daughter was in the hospital when she was very, very, very young. And part of the reason that she can walk normally today is because one of the nurses there simply had no empathy. And she was able to push my daughter's leg down into a brace that her mother could barely do. And even though this was to my daughter's benefit, I couldn't cause her that kind of pain. The other nurses just had so much trouble with it. And this nurse was happy to do it. It was terrifying, but also my daughter can walk. So even if your child is one of these kids, maybe don't treat them like a dragon. Maybe treat them like somebody who just needs more support than you expected a child would need. And maybe what they need from you is even more empathy. I'm not qualified to speak on this any more than this, but this much I can say: the child is never the dragon.
So there's some precedent for that in Judaism, in our ancestral wisdom, where, there's a talk about a child who was born under the stars to be a murderer. And because of the encouragement and reframing by the mother, he was instead given an education to become a shochet, to become a ritual slaughterer. And so what could have been a very negative, terrifying trait for society became something very positive. In the situation with my child who pulled a knife, he is probably one of my most empathetic children, and certainly was at that time. So I would pose it, and please expand. For us, in my assessment, and I'm not the expert in Jungian philosophy, but in my assessment, his frustration was the dragon. And that was something that we could help together. I could help him face and find new ways to express or deal with or manage, or all of the above. And that was the dragon. And instead of he's the dragon, it was let's face it together, which totally changed the dynamic.
Yes, thank you very, very much. That is much more true. By the way, at this point, I'm mixing systems. I have a background in both Neufeld's attachment theory and Jungian psychology. And as somebody who just synthesizes things very, very much, this is the synthesis that you're seeing. But yes, I totally agree with you that the dragon in this case would actually be the child's frustration, and it's okay, right? It's just a dragon. In terms of other stories, would you like can you tell me what other parts of this you would like frame, or you would like a personal story about? Just give me a little bit more direction.
I'd like to talk a bit about the next step after not seeing the child as the dragon, which is meeting the goddess. And one of the things you had said when we talked before was, we all know that long-suffering Jewish mother, oh, I'll just sit here in the dark. Well, which was a quote from you. I'm quoting you right now. I'll just sit here in the dark. Don't mind me. Codependency, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is something where we get out of that, right?
So that is also what, so you can consider that a couple of different ways. That is the shadow.
We lose Malkie at the good parts. They're all the good parts. And I don't even have the wisdom to be able to speak for Malkie or try and cover for this in any way. Do you, Chava?
No, I don't want to start anything because I know she's going to pop back. but I just, when you're looking around at other mothers, specifically mothers, but it could be any role, there's like, it seems to be either overbearing or underbearing. And she's either on top of her child and every move he makes, or they're just back and they don't care and they've got their own lives and they're on social media or I don't know what. They're not paying attention to the actual child. And this kind of brings it back down to recognize where you or someone you know or whatever who you can help is standing on that spectrum. And once you recognize it, it's easy to sort of step back and then go through these mental checklists, like what Malkie is taking us through, to sort of fix it if possible, and therefore change the whole tract of how the child is growing up and their mental, status and they're emotional. And I mean, it can just set something off on a completely different trajectory once you are able to recognize it and then categorize it down and break it down to the very present. So I really appreciate this, and that it all follows along this kind of storybook line, which everyone can relate to: Cinderella and the dragons and, all the different stories that we hear when we're kids. And it's like we can each fit into, or people that we know, or people that we're related to, into one of those archetypes. And it makes it relatable and understandable and digestible. It's like, it's so mind blowing. You have to kind of sit back for a minute and be like, it's wow.
Yeah,
I
it
couldn't
seems to
describe
be
it before, but now it's really describable.
It seems to be Jung's premise that these stories that we've been told since we were young children, I mean, that's why they're archetypes. They're in all of our brains subconsciously. And it's kind of a really neat way to frame challenges, particularly with mothering, is to say, this is a hero's journey. I'm going to fight my dragons. I'm going to get the gold chest. I'm going to, and then being able to end with mentorship. I think I saw Malkie try to get back on, but not quite yet. I just want to say from my notes from what Malkie said about meeting with the goddess, she talked about it being the ability to give without martyrdom, without being attached to the outcome or what you'll get out of it. And so many of us who had, especially a narcissistic parent, but parents with different personality issues and things, this is a real big one right here, is that kind of, you don't want to be that mother who's like, I did this for you and now you need to do this for me. Or that isn't unconditional love. That's the opposite. That's being attached to what you'll get. That's being, it's like martyrdoming. I did all this for you when you were a child and I gave you lessons and I gave you this and I drove you here and there. And it's very problematic. So how do we as women not be there? It's not even not say those things. It's not feel those things. And in order to not feel those things, it seems like we would have to come with a fuller cup, because when our own cup is totally empty and drained, we start like, look how I'm suffering. Look how I'm suffering. Gilla, I'm sure you have some thoughts about that too. You're muted.
Better. So I think part of this brings us to the point of learning to let go. And when we say let go, people, it's something different for everyone, but it's letting go of those preconceived notions. It's letting go of the things that we've been through and therefore expect from our children. Look what, like you said, I went through this and I'm doing this differently so that you don't have to go through this. Hello, Malkie.
Hello.
We've been waiting back for you and just chit-chatting. So again, I'm not going to talk more. I'm going to give it over to Malkie.
Okay, so I heard a little bit. Rivkah was spot on. Please forgive my tech problems. Okay, it's inevitable, right? So just pull me back. We were talking. Oh, right, we were talking about the shadow of the mother. And the shadow of the mother is actually a really, really important thing because when you're talking about an archetype, right? Um, Anything can be an archetype that has a duality to it. So there is a dark side and a light side. So imagine like the hero, right? Was we're talking about the hero has a light side and the hero has the dark side, right? And you can imagine the light side of the hero is brandishing forward, sword in hand, ready to fight the enemy. But the dark side of the hero is that they can't abide by anybody who isn't as amazing as them. They've got no patience, they've got no tolerance, and they think that everything is a dragon waiting to be killed, and the dragon is out to get them. Worse, there's a little bit of like paranoia sometimes involved in the shadow of the hero, right? So we recognize when whenever we're talking about an archetype, right? Every single archetype has a plus side and a minus side. There exists the light side of the archetype and the shadow side of the archetype. And the mother is absolutely not different. The light side of the mother is nurture, it's giving, it's love, it's feeding, it's like endless patience. This is the light side of the mother. But there exists a dark side of the mother that must be dealt with. If we pretend it's not there, it will come and it will erupt. Because when we are embodying the story of the mother, right, we're embodying the story, the dark side is, even if we only want to stay on the light side, the dark side is implied, right? And the dark side is, don't worry about me. I don't need anything. It's the exhaustion. But it's not just it's the guilt tripping. It's the, well, I didn't need it anyway, right? It's the giving up. It's the, just the, I mean, like codependency is really just a great shorthand for the shadow of the mother. It's the giving without end to somebody who doesn't need it also is the shadow of the mother because it's very, very easy. And this is something that I personally have gotten caught in. And it's actually, I think I've been hearing about this as a problem that modern women are having, where they find themselves in relationships with men who want mommy as opposed to a partner. And women are, and it's almost like a parasitic system where men want the nurture and women want to give nurture, and they find themselves in these relationships with men who want nurture, and then as soon as the babies come, they can't cope if they even get that far in the relationship and the man even commits, because who wants to marry their mother? But in the event that that does happen, um, then as soon as the children come, the father freaks out because he wants all of the nurturing and he wants all of the giving. So it is very, very easy to fall into the story of codependency. And here's the thing: this is where it gets very, very tricky because children need a lot. They need so, so much. And when you're talking about a tiny little baby, or even a child, or even a young child, right? Like they need this. They need all of this giving, and it is normal and it is healthy. The moment it becomes unhealthy is where you don't want them to have their own opinions. It's where you try to control. It's where you try to control by giving. I think Rivkah touched on that. It's where you it's where you give and give and give to somebody who'd really rather you stop. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware of this. Codependency can actually kill relationships. And if you find yourself in the shadow of the mother, please, please reach out for help. Help is absolutely possible. And you do not, if you find yourself in that situation, you do not have to live there.
This is a good time to interject that you can find Malkie. It's in the chat box here on LinkedIn. Malkie Rimon, MILKIERIMON, or at Instagram at the @ symbol Malkie, MALKIE _ Rimon, Rimon, and Malkie's available for private consulting and coaching that way. Okay, this is an easier one.
Okay.
This is easier. I'm backing off. The way the 10 easy steps, which I think we've all seen are not so easy, it turns out. I lied. It was clickbait. The 10 easy steps of the hero's journey ends with that full circle where you're giving back. And now, I mean, I'm looking at where these helpers are, and it's really, it's as soon as you accept that call, that's where the helpers appear. And so now you become one of those helpers, right? So I think it's very important because I know for me personally, I was making such bold I've been thinking a lot about this lately. I was making so many bold choices as a young mother. And I was compelled to go and be like, and teach it. And I kept holding back because I kept thinking, well, my kids might turn out really bad. Like, it all might fall. Like, everyone's telling me I'm wrong anyway, and I'm making every mistake, and it's like, maybe they don't really want to hear it. And like, I found all these excuses. But after hearing what you said, I think it's really empowering for some of these, for anyone younger mothers when we talk about mothering, but for anyone who's on this kind of hero's journey, that as soon as you've kind of got some ground under you, going out and giving to other people is actually super helpful it's like giving back. It's paying it forward, right?
Yes. Yes.
Can I say something?
Gilla here would be, yeah.
So, and I remember we discussed this. And so I feel like so many of us and so many women, people, men, I'm sure as well, but women definitely, we always feel like Rivkah just said, I don't feel like I'm qualified. What if my kids don't turn out great? Well, hello. When people say to me something about one of my kids, they're so amazing. You did such a good job. And I'm always like, oh gosh, if I did such a good job, I can't take credit for all of it, because then I'd also have to take credit for some of the things they do that aren't so great, maybe, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's not all or nothing on us. That's number one. Number two is the giving back. I feel so blessed that I have been working with women since literally forever. And I'm so grateful that I still do. And I feel like when you said, if you have it, your baby's 2 days old, you can help someone with a 1 day old. So I feel like it's not a matter of, okay, I have to wait for them all to turn out right so that I can be right. It's got nothing to do with being right. It's the open heart, having a little experience and holding someone's hand, not saying, well, I did it like this, you have to do it like that. And the other thing is I wanted to say, and we discussed this, is the spirals. Just because we reach the goddess doesn't mean it's stasis. We don't stay there. It's okay. We still might deal with other things. It's going to be another spiral. So if you can go into that, I think it's going to be so helpful for all our listeners, because we're never really, truly, fully there yet. Part is, and then, oh my gosh, deep dive, next lesson, spiral, spiral, spiral. So can you go into that, please?
Okay, so before, I just want to address the first part of what you said, which is, do you know what you call a group of people who are helping each other? Community.
Yes. Yes.
Right? And forming a community of mothers is going, and everybody can help everybody else. And it's not about outcome, and it's not about the future, it's about community. And the other thing is that there exists, like, we live in a culture where perfection is sought after, and that's okay. There is something to be said for striving in that way. But what's better than perfection? Presence, being present.
Love it.
Way better than perfection. So being present for another person, no matter how. And sometimes, what? Some of my best friends, their children are their own people. Let's leave it. Their children are their own people. And I still value their mothering advice because they know things that I don't, because they've been through ringers that I have not. And it's not about outcome. It's about them having a deep knowledge that is valuable regardless of outcome.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. Now, in terms of the spiral, one of the things about the hero's journey, and I want to also point this out for Lowell, which is I'm talking about right now about the women's hero's journey. The men's hero's journey is a little bit different than this. There's less about leaving the mother. For obvious, there's none about leaving the mother, for instance. But wherever you are in your life, all of the different aspects of your life you can be on a different hero's journey in. So when it comes to your work, you can be absolutely killing it, and you are, and you're in that project, and things are coming at you, and you are managing beautifully, and you can be in that part, and you can, that's facing the dragon and killing it. That's awesome. And there could be somewhere else where you're in the belly of the whale, and meanwhile you're getting a call for another aspect of your life. And then in all of the different parts of your life, there are going to be, and also with each of your children, if you're probably going to be in a different spot in the hero's journey or in the heroine's journey, because older children need different things than younger children do. Sometimes they need more. Oh my goodness. People told me, oh yeah, when your kids get big, they're going to need you totally just as much as they did when they were toddlers. I was like, I don't believe that. And then I was on the phone for 2 hours with my daughter last night have you ever heard of programming language? Being a duck. Basically, a duck is when you hit a problem in computer programming, you have a rubber duck and you work out the problem with your rubber duck. I was my daughter's rubber duck for 2 hours on the phone late at night. Why? Because she needed her mommy.
Okay, but also there's, with an older child, you can put some boundaries. Like you can say, I'm in a meeting now, let me call you in 30 minutes. Whereas with a baby in the middle of the night who needs to nurse, there's no, I'm sorry, mommy needs 30 minutes more of sleep, I'll get back to you later, right?
Obviously, my daughter knows exactly when she cannot call me, no matter what. I mean, unless it is an on-fire emergency, she knows when I've got my clients, I will not answer the phone. I will not, that's it. But although the fact is that she normally calls me later at this point in time. And also there are weeks where she doesn't, or there are days, not weeks at a time, but there are days at a time where it's like, if I get a text message from her, that's awesome. Right?
Yeah, neglect for a baby is different than for a 15-year-old. And so I just want to point that out, because a lot of times women are given the message, your baby's screaming and hungry. If 6 hours or 4 hours or 5 hours hasn't passed on the clock, then you're indulging that baby. That baby's manipulating you. And I don't want our viewers to get caught into that situation. So obviously, Malkie's shaking her head, but I want to be super crystal clear that when we're talking about the first 3 to 5 years, so even a 5-year-old doesn't necessarily need to nurse in the middle of the night, but wait a minute, 5-year-olds can get low blood sugar pretty darn fast. 5-year-olds can need a drink or need the toilet in the middle of the night and say, no, we don't get out of bed because we've got these rules and boundaries. That coming into your masculine energy and setting rules and boundaries has to be tempered with that feminine, intuitive wisdom and understanding of what is cruel for a 5-year-old, but certainly maybe not for another age. By the way, I would never say at any age a child could not go to the bathroom. Okay, that would not. But I'm saying having a full course dinner, perhaps, a little baby is going to need to eat in the middle of the night. An older child, why don't we wait till breakfast? Let's have a little snack and eat in the morning. Just to be clear, so there's no mistake and people don't come back at the three of us and say, wait a minute, you said, no, I didn't. And neither did anyone else on here.
And I definitely did not. I was just now talking very, very specifically about older children and about adult children. I was not talking about little babies. Little babies, again, you're talking about a creature that that's completely underdeveloped, that needs and needs and needs. And also when it comes to that codependency, it's wired into us because it's what an infant needs. But part of our job as a mother is to know what to give, that what we need to give to an infant is not the same thing that we need to give to a 2-year-old, is not the same thing that we need to give to a 5-year-old, is not the same thing we need to give to a 20-year-old.
But to do that, you also have to be in tuned to your intuitive wisdom. And so many women are told, feed on a schedule, you know, this and that, drop your kid off at Dagan. The child's crying, saying, Mommy, please don't leave me. How many mothers have been sent to my door? Go talk with Rivkah Asoulin because she homeschools, and they're coming sobbing because they've just dropped their kid off at Dagan for the first time, saying, I feel it's so wrong. My little baby who's 9 months old or 1 year old or 1.5 or whatever it is, or 3 years old, still needs his mother. And I would sit here and say, yes, he does. You're feeling that because that's your intuitive wisdom talking to you. And she goes, but everyone told me he'll be fine and he needs to get used to it. And what about my career? And I'll have a hole in my resume, and so on and so on and so on. And I'm sitting here, this oppositional voice, like you were for me, Malkie, in a lot of ways, saying, listen to your intuition. That's your truth for you. So that's another piece of the puzzle. In order to get that balance right, you've got to be really rooted in your feminine, and men as well, to listen to hear their babies crying or hear, you know, other people's needs. Malkie, I know that we could talk with you forever. We've gone on our hour since we started. We started a bit late, and I know that you have to leave and Chava's already gone. Are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I think that it's okay that something that I had trouble with was acknowledging myself as a hero. That I'd done all of this, but when someone said, oh, you're a hero, I'd be like, no, 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 no. And I think that when we're on this journey, we get to call ourselves heroes. And it's a good thing also that there is something heroic about leaving your comfort zone, and especially in terms of like the comfort zone can even be seen as a culture that's telling you parent like this and parent and only feed your child into the schedule and send your child here and separate from your child. It could be that in this case the heroic thing to do is to say no to all of those voices and find your tribe of women who are saying, no, I'm going to go with my intuition. I'm going to be there for my baby, and I know that I'm dealing with a child who needs me, very much me. I'm the answer, and I'm going to be there as the answer. And yeah, that's heroic, and yeah, that's okay.
Malkie, thank you so much. It goes right back to that 12-year-old who's 8. Just because all the other kids seem to be doing fine and Dagan doesn't mean that your child is going to be fine and Dagan or anywhere else. And this is your child. Hashem gave your child to you, not the government, not the community, not anybody else. The responsibility of raising a child according to his or her way falls on the parent, specifically the father, actually, but certainly the mother is very involved in that. Okay, thank you so much. We're going to end the recorded portion now, but we're happy if Malkie can stay a little bit. If there's any questions, we're happy for that. So thank you all so much.
Thank